Hello, beautiful souls. So, I wanted to talk about pulling weeds today. And not in the literal sense. I am actually talking about pulling weeds from your life, the thought patterns and the belief systems that you have, pulling out those weeds. So, I have a beautiful front yard, and we have this section that the weeds like to come up. And every so often we have to go out and we have to pull the weeds out. In doing that one day, I realized that in pulling them out, there were some that were like clusters. And they were connecting, the roots underneath were connecting to each other. Even though they had their own root system, their roots were starting to connect, and it was, you could tell, like on the outside, like here's one part, and then it would connect over here, and then it would connect over here, and it would just be more like a system. And as I was pulling out these clusters, I started to think about that in the logical sense in my mind of what are things that I needed to pull out in my life. What are belief systems that I needed to pull out of my life? And from not being, thinking of not being good enough, not being smart enough, not being happy, to feeling alone, nobody relates to me, all these different belief systems that we tend to take on as our own. I started evaluating each one, and I actually had come inside after I had finished, and I started writing down things that I felt I was believing that needed to be pulled out. Something, I attempted to do this video a little while ago, and I had come to a realization in this, so I want to share it with you. So one of the things that I had struggled with in high school was math, specifically algebra. I had struggled with algebra. I took it 3 times. Finally, the 3rd time I passed. And I had taken that analogy in my adulthood. I had taken it as, I'm stupid in math. I don't get math. When in reality, it wasn't that I'm stupid in math, because actually I'm really good in math, but in the simplicity of math. Little disclaimer, I understand the concept of Common Core math. However, I'm talking about the simplicity of the math that I grew up with, just straight adding and subtracting. And same thing with multiplying and dividing. I'm not talking about the Common Core that they have now, where they have the thinking process. It's just the simplicity of adding and subtracting kind of math. So in my adulthood, I would always say, even, not that long ago, I would say how I am stupid in math. Like, I'm not good at math. And my kids, I would say to my kids all the time, I'm just stupid in math. Don't ask me for math questions, because obviously I'm going to get it wrong. And I came to realize that it wasn't that I'm stupid. I'm really not. I'm actually really good at it. In taking that theology, I realized that when you take on the complexity of math and adding variables and scenarios, it's very confusing for me. The thing that I came to realize, not that long ago, in trying to do this video before, was that my comprehension in high school is different than my comprehension now. So, in that being, I did not have the correct tools for me to comprehend algebra like I probably could now if I took the time. And I honestly think that is something that I'm going to do for myself, is I'm going to take the time and try to learn algebra, because that is something that I struggled with in high school, because I feel like I couldn't comprehend it in my high school thought process. Whereas, especially this past year, and the things that I have been able to break down for myself, I think that if I was to break down algebra in a different mindset, in a different way, that I would probably be able to comprehend algebra in a whole different light than how I did in high school. So when we pull out weeds, we need to pull out the belief system that we can't do something, that we're not good enough to do something. In reality, we are. We are amazing at the things that we can do. It just may be that we don't have the right tools at that time. The one thing that I always loved as a kid was hearing different quotes. And even into my adulthood, like, I love hearing different quotes. One of the quotes, I believe it's from Albert Einstein, that's what's coming to mind, is that if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, then it'll always believe that it's stupid. I believe that's how it goes. I am summarizing it, so if I didn't say it correctly, I apologize. But if we take it in that aspect, that because we didn't do a good enough job in one area means that we're stupid, and that's not correct, because a fish can't climb a tree, obviously. So if we take that analogy and we say, well, because I can't do this certain thing, then I'm not good enough. And that's the wrong theology to have. And that's a weed that we need to pull out from our lives, because we are good enough. It's just that we may not be good in that area, and it may be that we don't have the right tools. It may be that we don't have the right mindset. We may have to grow some before we are able to go back and say, you know what? I'm a fish. I'm not meant to climb a tree. I'm not meant to do those things. And that is A-okay. Because if you're not meant for something, then don't judge yourself upon doing that. Because that's putting an expectation on yourself that you can't meet. Pull that weed out. You may not have what you need to accomplish that task. And that's okay, because we are individuals. We all have strengths and weaknesses about ourselves. We are not going to be perfect in every area of our lives. We are not going to be perfect individuals in every aspect. I worked for quite a few different law firms, and this last one, I absolutely loved the foundation of what he created in his firm, because there were different sections of what you did in your lane. When you stay in your lane and you perfect your area, it's a whole lot different perspective than when you put yourself in a different lane that you don't understand and you can't grasp at that moment. So many times in my life, in working especially, I feel like in the corporate world, I worked for law firms, attorney offices, and I feel like there's so much that rides on a paralegal or a legal assistant that you're not allowed to make mistakes. And I understand the concept of not making mistakes, because obviously it reflects on the attorney. However, we are human beings. We make mistakes. We mess up. And we are not machines. We cannot pump out the same consistency every single day, because you know what? We're not built like that. I know I'm not built like that. I'm not a machine. I can't pump out the same thing every single day, the same way every single day, because I'm not made like that. So I had to take that, and I had to pull that weed out and recognize that I'm not a machine, that I'm a human being, and that my energy is not always going to be top notch. That I'm going to have some days that I'm going to feel run down, and that there are going to be days that I'm going to be on top of the world, and each part is okay. These are just different weeds that I have pulled out for myself, and there's only a couple of them that I'm sharing because I think that I have a list, and I think that each section needs to be discussed in a deeper way. But I wanted to get the point across that there are weeds in our lives, there are belief systems in our lives that we have taken on as ourselves, and those weeds need to be gone. We'd be gone. Like, we need to pull out the root of it and understand that it needs to be pulled out. And in that thinking of when you're pulling that weed out, understanding why that weed needs to be pulled out. What is it about that weed that does not need to be there? What is it about that belief system that does not need to be rooted? And you need to pull them out of your lives, because when you pull the weeds out, it gives the earth and your foundation a chance to be beautiful and to be free of that weight. We put so much emphasis and so much weight into things in our lives that should not be there. So we need to start pulling those weeds out. We need to start identifying that it's a weed, identifying that it needs to be pulled out, and we need to grab it by, even if we have to dig a little deeper to grab all of that weed and that root system out of the ground, and find the connectings, because weeds do connect. So find that connecting one and pull that weed out too. Understand it, examine it. Do what you have to do to get that weed out. And understand, weeds do come back. So there may be a pattern that you may have to completely break. There may be something that you need to put down to protect yourself so that you do not go down that path again, or you do not have that root to reappear in your life. I have dealt with for so long my self-worth of that underlying that I am not worthy of the things in my life, that I am not worthy of a beautiful and an amazing love, that I'm not worthy of having the financial abundance in my life, that I'm not worthy of having the freedom to do my life as I choose to. I have felt that. I can't even tell you how many years that I have felt bogged down by that, and every time I think that I pull it out, it appears again, until I recognized the pattern, and I recognized that there was a protection barrier that I needed to put down, that I would not allow myself to feel that way anymore. I would not allow certain things to pop up in my life anymore, and I would break those things down so that I did not have that weed come back in my life. Because the bottom line is, I am deserving of love. I am the essence of love within myself. And until I recognized that for myself, I was going to keep finding that weed in my life. I was going to keep trying to pull that weed out, and it keep reappearing until I faced it, until I understood it, until I broke it down and really grabbed it at its root and pulled it out. Because I am worthy. I am so worthy of a life that is beautiful and that is just full of joy and full of happiness and full of love. I am worthy to be loved like the love that I give out. I am worthy of that, and I know that for myself. And that was something that I had to really come to terms with, and understanding that the weed needed to keep getting pulled out, and I needed to understand why it kept popping up, and I needed to find the protection barrier to not allow that to come in. Whether it be a weed be gone type of thing, or a barrier where, like, we have mulch down, so we have a protective barrier from the ground, the protective barrier, and then we have the mulch down, which does not allow the weed to come through. Now, there are some instances where it didn't get covered as well and the weed still pops through. However, it's very far and few between. But I want to relate this to our lives in the sense of, if there's something we need to protect, we need to set boundaries for, we need to, see and understand that when something starts to come forth, that we need to stop it where it is and say, no, it doesn't go any further than this. And that's the protective barrier that I'm speaking of. When you break that cycle, you break things down to understanding, and you pull it at its root, and you get it all out and you get the connecting barriers all out, then it's a lot easier to recognize and to know that, like, nope, I'm going to set that boundary. I'm not going to let anything happen and come forth from that, because I know, and I'm standing in my truth. I know that I'm worthy enough of these things. And I can go on a whole sector of self-worth. However, I just wanted to get the basis of this. You are smart enough. You are worthy. You are deserving. You are unique and intricately designed. And you belong. And what you have to offer this world, other people need it. Like, there's so much about you that people need to see. So don't be scared to stand in your truth. Don't be scared to say, you know what, I may not be good in this thing right now, but maybe I'll understand it later on, like I did. You know, or I'm going to choose to, in the case of the algebra, like, that is something that I'm going to work for in trying to understand algebra. And maybe because I didn't understand it then doesn't mean that I don't understand it now. So I will have to update you on my algebra and see how that goes, if I'm better at understanding and comprehending the algebra, or if it's just because my mind is just about simplicity, which is kind of the essence of my life. I like to live a more simplistic life. That is who I really am at the core of me. I like simplicity. And that's something that was really hard, you know, for my mom to understand at one point, because she was like, you know, she has all these, you know, gadgets and things and all this stuff, and she was like, you know, well, won't you need this, won't you need that, you know, when we were moving. And I was like, no, I don't need all of that, because I have the basic needs. I have what I need, and that's all that I need. But I really wanted to touch on this because I think that it's important that we take out the roots that don't need to be there. We take out the weeds that don't need to be in our lives, and see how free you become. So I hope this encourages somebody. I hope that somebody can gain some insight and, you know, understanding in this. And I will be on here soon.